Welcome to the Holo Health Podcast. My name is Alex, and thanks for checking out today's episode. According to the Gospel of John, we believe that Jesus invites everyone to an abundant life, one that is characterized by health, strength, joy, and peace. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all searching for. In fact, it's how God designed it in the first place. Here at Holo Health, we strive to align ourselves with Jesus' invitation into the abundant life, which in fact actually is a truly healthy life. You can check out holohealth.com to learn more about this, but until then, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Mike, thanks for jumping on the Holo Health Podcast. How are you today?
Doing good. How you fellas doing?
I'm good. I'm also here, Alex. Thanks for...
Oh, wait, we have Trevor here as well. Listeners, I'm super excited for this conversation. We have Mike Elkins in here, and I guess, Trevor. I forgot about you. I apologize.
I'm also in the studio.
You are in the studio.
I guess Trevor. It's Trevor.
It's all right.
But we're jumping into this episode, Mike, because we want you to instill all of the wisdom and the expertise and all the good stuff on us. So here at Holo Health, we are becoming truly healthy, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. So we just kind of want to hear what you are doing in each of those areas to pursue greater levels of health. So before we get there, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. I like to say paint the 60-second picture of who Mike Elkins is. Tell us, what do you do? And then how are you connected with Holo Health? How did we end up on this podcast?
Yeah, so my biggest claims to fame is I'm married to my wife, Mickey. People have always liked her more than me. When you were talking about giving wisdom, I was like, do you want to go downstairs and get her? She might be a more fun interview. I have 4 kids. So I have a freshman in high school, a 6th grader, a 4th grader. Those 3 are girls. And then my youngest is a son. He's in kindergarten. I'm a pastor in Northwest Ohio. I've been here in Bryan, Ohio for almost 8 years, which is kind of wild to think about. Long story short, about 10 years ago, I was the unhealthiest I had ever been and decided to, I didn't really decide to do something about it. I had a friend that posted something about doing CrossFit in my garage tomorrow. Who wants to come? And I honestly hadn't talked to that friend in 10 years. And I was like, oh, you live close to me. Sure, I'll come tomorrow. I had no clue what was going to happen. And I did Tabata squats. That was my first workout. And it just messed me up for a week. Because I have 2 speeds, stand still or just go as hard as you possibly can. And with people around, I was like, well, I'm not going to wuss out on this. I'm just going ham. My friend was like, you might want to slow down. Nah, I'm good. I was not good, and mistakes were made. And honestly, I kind of got hooked, and it really just changed things for me and really started just a new way of seeing health. And it just changed my perspective. As far as being connected with Holo Health, I don't know, a year into that, maybe a couple years into that. Alex, you were what? Were you 16, 17?
I was a senior in high school.
Okay, yeah. So
18 maybe.
I asked Alex to come do a workout. He didn't want to do anything ever during sports seasons because he didn't want to hurt himself. So I finally talked him into coming. I think it was Christmas Eve, which is a weird time to show up. And that was when Alex did his first CrossFit workout. And then we kind of just had that bond. And then you guys started Holo Health, and just been really cool to see what you guys are doing with that and the lives that will change because of that. It's pretty sweet.
Hey, by the way, I was way more open than you make me out to be. I was like, hey, I'll come do CrossFit with you. I didn't know what it was, but it was in the middle of basketball season. And then from that day, I remember I would get in so much trouble with my basketball coach because he's like, stop working out 5 times a week. I need you fresh at practice. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is way more fun. And then
let's be honest, you were fine at practice. It was fine.
Yeah, but we were literally just figuring things out. So context for anyone listening, I owe all of my success to Mike Elkins, because he was the one that gave me the invite. And we talk about here at Whole Health that your community is the strongest dose of accountability you ever get. And that simple invite changed my life. And that community that we had literally just refined us, empowered us. I mean, we had fun. It was some good times back then. So
Yeah, and that's why I find myself on the struggle bus right now, honestly, is just I feel like that community piece is missing a little bit than it ever has been. And it's just been a weird feeling to be such I know it was 8 years ago, but to have like such a close knit community in a gym and so many people moving the same direction to not having that, I mean, it's like whiplash. And I'm definitely starting to feel the effects of that.
I mean, Trevor and I say a lot at Whole Health that there are 5 components: physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual. And Mike, you have outlets for all the other 4, but that you say that relational, as far as like the fitness, staying active community, has been lacking, or it wasn't what it was when we first started, and you feel that, which is really, really good awareness. Mike, this is kind of leading into the next question, and then Trevor, I'll kind of let you take over as well. Is You said 10 years ago when you had that invite, it really changed a lot for you. What were some of the misunderstandings, the struggles, the concept of health that you had before that? And then over the past 10 years, what have you learned about health, what it's not, some things you do differently? Because that was a big turning point. Like, hey, I was invited to Brock's Garage, and this really like was a catalyst for a new way of life. Describe before and after that.
Yeah, I think really the only context I had for, health and fitness before that was either, I played sports, so I would lift because I had to for sports. But other than that, it just seemed like broing out, and like it was all about guzzling as much protein shakes as you could and getting swole. And I just wasn't. It's just not like kind of how I'm wired. I mean, it wasn't any desire I really had, and so I always just struggled to kind of find a place to fit, so to speak. At that point, I wasn't into like endurance sports or anything like that, and so yeah, honestly, when I show up in Brock's Garage, it was just like, oh, this is something totally different. And it kind of got me in the door, but then the door opened into conversations about just being physically healthy,
Yeah.
not trying to be jacked. That wasn't the goal here. It was to move better. It was to, at that time I just had my third kid, and so it was like, do I, you know, how do I be a fun dad that can actually like do stuff with my kids and be around? And then when it comes time for grandkids, like how can I still be moving well and, be the fun grandpa? And so those conversations started to change things. I think it's CrossFit HQ that maybe put out, do they call it like the wellness scale? Like if you can bank health when sickness comes, like, yeah, it'll go down, but like you've got so much in the bank that you actually can like endure those things. That idea really just tracked with me of like, how can I bank health? And, to be completely transparent, right now I'm in one of those places physically, probably not as healthy as I want to be, but I do feel like I've banked enough to now I'm in a place where I know something needs to change, but I don't feel like I'm in a dangerous place, if that makes sense, because I have done the work for the last, 10 years. So it was very perspective changing for me in that. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with health and fitness, just being healthy in general, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, is it's this like 1,000 mile per hour mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, well, I need to if I can't be in the gym 2 hours every day, if I can't eat 1,000% correct, if I can't, when it comes to like Bible study, if I can't be a scholar, like I'm not even going to step foot in that arena because what's the point?
Right.
And I think that's just one of the biggest misconceptions people have. And honestly, it's a misconception. I think we all still at times kind of find ourselves leaking back into, regardless of what any of those areas are, again, spiritually, mentally, physically.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone, a gal this week. We were talking about, scripture, and she expressed some feelings of like, I feel less than, I feel inadequate when it comes to approaching scripture because I didn't go to college. I don't feel very smart in general. So she's believing all these lies about herself, and, hopefully getting down the pathway of like, that's okay. Like, just, you don't have to be, a genius level theologian in order to study scripture. You don't have to be whole health coaches to understand or to dip your toes into the health world. I mean, it's one area you guys are like proficient in, but not everybody is, but that's okay. So I think just helping people change that perspective is helpful.
Yeah, Mike, I love what you're saying. And I think what is important to harp in on here is some areas of your health are naturally going to happen easier for you. They just will. Like, inevitably they will. I mean, just take yourself, for example, like working in the church setting, like your spiritual health, nurturing your spiritual health, which directly impacts your mental health as well. Like, that is super common that you're going to nurture that because you have to. You know that you have to be Romans 12, where you have to be rooted in truth and renewing your mind. And I think what's important, listeners, for you to hone in on is like, that's probably the case for you as well. Like, one area of your health is probably more natural for you to pursue. So what I want to ask the question here, Mike, is like, okay, how did you recognize what moment, what realization did you have to realize that it's like, okay, since 8 years ago, there's been some shifts physical health wise. Like, how did you realize that, okay, now I need to look at my physical health and look to steward that well? There's been some gaps, and I want to give area to that portion of my health. How did that happen?
I think, I talked about that 1,000 mile per hour mentality. I kind of fall victim to that. I'm kind of I'm naturally wired to go big or to go home. That's kind of how I approach things, unfortunately. And sometimes it's beneficial, but not all the time.
Right.
So I kind of fell out of some rhythms of specifically working out in a way that's I feel was beneficial for me. And part of it was because I was missing that community piece, and it was kind of losing. Like, I found myself dreading going to do it, and for the last 9 years that wasn't the case. Like, I couldn't wait to show up and to do whatever. And so I started kind of dabbling into some other fitness areas, which I think is totally fine. But I went like super hard in a specific direction towards a certain specific goal, fitness related goal. And I achieved that. But at the same time, I felt like I lost a healthy perspective of health in the process. Because I got so hyper focused on this one thing. And then I accomplished the thing, and it was like, oh, now I feel a little bit lost. And I need to get back to like not having, I'm all for like setting some goals. I think that's helpful for people, but I lost the goal of just maintaining a natural and normal, healthy life. Like, with the goal being health, not, a medal or not a thing to achieve, but just health.
Yeah. And so I want to piggyback off that real quick, Mike. I love it. And we've talked about it. So I have context to like, what you're talking about. And I think it's 100% true. You can have a goal-oriented thing that you're working towards, but what happens is when we get so single item focused that we often lose track of the big picture, literally like you just said. And it's quite often too, Mike, that it removes a lot of the enjoyment that comes with pursuing health in all of those areas that we talk about in the way that you enjoy the most. And when that happens, like we've got this sideways energy, and it makes it so much harder to realign our behaviors and our habits with one, what God designed and invites us, but then two, also with what we truly enjoy. Just because
Yeah.
we wanted to achieve something. And again, we're not obviously demonizing or critiquing that endeavor,
Yeah.
but it's just an awareness thing too, is where we, obviously increasing clarity to understand, it does require a lot of attention, and almost like an overemphasis of attention towards that thing, other than the other areas of health. So I appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Mike, what are some things you do now as far as your daily routines and habits and rhythms that you just try to steward your health well? What are some practical things that you do?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I get up at 4 a.m. And we'll read a little bit, and then I head into the gym. Honestly, with my pace of, and I don't want to say my pace of life, with my family, 4 kids, and I got one playing softball, and I got one playing soccer, I got one playing baseball, I got one doing other things, and if it doesn't happen before everybody wakes up, it's just not going to happen. I value sleep too much to like, well, I'll work out at 10 o'clock tonight. That's not my thing. Um, so that's just become a sustainable rhythm for me. Thursdays and Fridays are my days where, so like Thursdays, I'll wait until the kids go to school. I'll take them to school, and then I'll go straight to the gym. So I get to sleep in a little bit. So on Wednesday nights, we have youth group at the church, so I'm up a little bit later, and then I see Wednesday nights and Thursday nights as nights I can stay up a little bit later, with my family, to get some time in that. Fridays I'm off, so again I'll wait until I take the kids to go to school, and then I'll go to the gym then. Um, so typically I like, and this isn't like, I like to be the first one at my office every day, and that's not because I just want to get more work in. It's literally kind of the quietest time of the day. And so I'll get to the office about 7:35, 7:40, and I usually have at least an hour before anybody shows up. And that's when I can do some like me time, some reading. I have a guitar in my office. Sometimes if you were to sneak in quietly, you hear me screeching in the hall down my office. So I'm just belting out some music. That's just kind of like an important rhythm to me. And then I know I talked with, I was texting with you guys. It was basically like, hey, I'm free anytime up until 3 p.m. 3 p.m. hits, and it's like everything just is 1,000 miles an hour with kids. And, this kid wants to go to this friend's house, and this kid needs a ride here, and this kid. And I have always wanted to be a dad that was there for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, and not that I didn't want to ever just like hang that on my wife. Like, well, you figure out how to get everybody everywhere, and you figure out, dinner, and you figure out that. So luckily my job is flexible enough that I can pretty much be around once the kids get off school, and I'm able to kind of help out and be around for that stuff. So that's kind of how my daily schedule goes. When I was doing all the running, I was getting up at like 3 a.m., which was nice and quiet, and I do miss that, but I don't necessarily miss the waking up at 3 a.m. part of that. That was a little too early.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to bed at like 8:30 every night, and I just felt like I was missing out on a ton of stuff.
I think what is important to note here, Mike, is your story and current life situation and season of life is so relatable, because I guarantee there's someone listening that's like, yeah, like I feel like I am speaking right now. Like that's my
Mm-hmm.
life that Mike's talking about. And what's important is that you recognize that your health is attention to manage. And you know that because obviously you've been following along with Holo and the message that's preached, but you also just believe that
Mm-hmm.
in true health. Like you believe it's attention to manage. And what happens when we over prioritize always one thing, something has to suffer. And so
Mm-hmm.
you recognize, and I love your commitment to your family. Like you recognize that your relational health and honestly your mental and emotional health, that you desire deeply to be a present father and husband. And you also recognize the importance of stewarding our physical bodies and physical health so well that you're committed to that. And I think that's important to note. And what's interesting, I didn't hear you say anything about I'm trying to get a 500-pound back squat. I didn't hear anything about like I'm trying to get in the best shape of my life. Your goal and what you said at the beginning and what you're focused on is like, I just want to live like a truly healthy life for myself, but really so that I can like just love and be with my family, which is kind of like the whole orientation of what we want people to experience anyways. Like I want to become truly healthy so that I'm better able to love others.
Yeah, I think we have to be really careful. I think we subconsciously communicate things to our kids. And I talk to people all the time like, oh, I can't really focus on that because, the kids and, once they're out of the house, and I'm like, what you're subconsciously communicating is I'm going to use the people I love as an excuse to hurt myself. Um, and I think you're missing a teaching opportunity for your kids. I mean, my kids knew what I was doing. We had conversations about why it's important that I get up at this time so that I can be there for you guys because I love hanging out with you. But this is really important to me as well, because I do want to be able to be there for you. And so just having that open line of communication. My wife didn't necessarily love my last fitness goal I took on because it did require just a lot of time. And we talked about it, and I totally understand her point of view. And I kind of committed to her, like, hey, I promise this won't get in the way of any family stuff. On Saturdays, I had to do like 30-mile runs every Saturday. So that meant getting out the door by 3:30 and maybe being home by 9 a.m. and then just like having a normal life. And I did tell her, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I won't let it affect family stuff. And once this is over, I will probably never do this again because it's really difficult to keep that promise. It got really difficult. But yeah, I think you teach your kids something and saying like, I'm not gonna be healthy. Like the reality is your kids learn that. And then unfortunately they become unhealthy as well, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually.
Mike, I want to riff on the kids for a second. How do you intentionally try to increase levels of health in your kids?
Um, Again, some areas are more natural and some are more challenging. Surprisingly, like one of the areas I struggle to maybe more intentionally develop health in my kids is spiritually because I have like this little bit of a fear of like, well, dad's a pastor, so it's like what he's going to talk about all the time.
Right.
And I don't want to like damage my kids. I don't want them to see my job as like, oh gosh, dad's talking about this stuff again. And honestly, at times I just go too far the other way where it's not. I'm maybe not as intentional. It's maybe more reactionary. And so we're trying to work through some of that. One of the areas that's probably the most natural is in the physical side for us.
Mm-hmm.
We have kids that play some sports, and so there's a lot of opportunities to have the conversations. My oldest daughter, she's a swimmer, and she plays tennis. Dude, swim is brutal. I mean, brutal. Their practices over Christmas break, they were swimming like 5 miles a day. I mean, it was like wild. And like, I can't even do their warm ups. Like, that's like, I watch them warm up. I'm like, yeah, I'm done, man. But like, for her, she's very, very driven over the things she wants to be driven about. And I'm a little bit the same way. And so, I feel like my job with her is to like calm her down a little bit. Like, hey, I know you're like rage monstering because you didn't hit a PR in this meet, but like you're spiraling now, and now you're going to swim worse in your next event. So somehow you got to shake this off. And so those kind of conversations are more natural for us to have just with my second daughter. She plays softball and soccer, and so we just more opportunities for those conversations. And it's so different because I have kids in each age range. I've got high school, I got middle school, I got elementary, and I have one just coming out of toddler years. It feels like whiplash trying to jump back and forth between those conversations. A conversation with a ninth grader is a lot more logical sometimes. And then I get into a conversation with my sixth grade daughter, and it's like, what is happening? Like the most illogical, irrational, drama-filled conversation ever. And, I think just understanding each of them are different, and you have to approach them a different way. Alex, I remember you having conversations, us back in the day, about, your dad, and it was like, man, my dad's making me take a nap today after church, and I want to go to Qdoba, but he's making me take a nap. And
I remember that. I remember that.
Now he's grateful.
He gets so mad about it, but you're like, oh no, he actually knew something I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm hoping people are putting me down for a nap now.
I told you to take a nap yesterday.
You did, yes. But yeah,
he was
right.
getting a little angsty. I was like, bro, please just go take a nap.
That's a friend right there.
Mike, I just love the way that you share that. I obviously don't have children yet. We've talked about that before, but it's inspiring to hear that on this end. I have a question as we're kind of rounding third on the podcast. It's been really, really good stuff. Listeners, hope that you're enjoying as well. In the context of the church, okay, putting that hat and that lens on right now, what do you feel like is a struggle or a gap that you see in regards to true health?
Oh, this is going to make me sound like an old person, so I apologize. I think two things. There's like a line in the sand, and I don't know where that line is, but it's probably somewhere around the age of, let's just say, 32. Basically, you have two groups of people who have grown up with the internet in their pocket and people who have not. And I know this doesn't sound like a church problem, but I think it is a spiritual problem. You have a group of people that, for the most part, and this is a very generalized statement, and I know you two fall into this category, and please don't feel like attacked because it's not everybody, but like just people not knowing how to cope, not knowing like everything to them is trauma. Like, but these are things that happen to everybody. The loss of a grandparent, the loss of a parent, the loss of whatever it is, or things that every person will experience. And like, it to me, it's spiritual and the mental health. Like, there's just a lowering of that ceiling. And I just see a major difference in people who have grown up with a cell phone in their hands and people who have not. Now, it becomes a spiritual problem is because there's a lack of godly worldview, for lack of a better word. People are getting their lens that they see the world through from the world. The lens that they see the world through is from social media, which is why, higher than ever, you have eating disorders, you have depression, you have all these things. And it's a spiraling effect. I mean, you guys, if you were to pull up your Instagram and you were to look at your suggested feed to you, what's in your suggested feed?
All Bible verses.
All right, well, mine aren't. So it's going to be
I'm just kidding.
Gym stuff, nutrition stuff, maybe some recipes, and probably some dog videos.
I love it. Alex, what's yours for real?
Literally probably 80% CrossFit highlight videos.
Of himself.
Not of myself. A lot of
Alex overhead squatting.
A lot of parenting fails and like family fail videos. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, mine's health and fitness stuff. It's guitar videos and it's hunting. Like, social media is not stupid. It's providing the algorithm that you want. Well,
right.
what does a seventh grader want? The dumbest stuff in the world.
Exactly.
And so it's like this vicious cycle of, you know, putting you down a spiral instead of pausing that and going like, what does God say about this?
Yep. That's good.
How can I see the world this way? And so because of that, you have a pretty low biblical IQ in people who follow Jesus. And they say, I follow Jesus, but really they follow what feels good in the day and what a friend gives them advice or some Instagram quote. Instead of actually having like this biblical worldview that it's the filter in which you see everything, not just a part of your life. So
that's good.
I think those are two really big problems that we see today.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mike, any last minute things you want to say, something to encourage someone, a takeaway, something you learned? We have about 2 minutes left on this conversation. What do you got?
Trevor, I know you don't have kids right now, but like it is the best thing, man. Being like it always made me so mad when people before I had kids or after I had my first kid, they'd be like, "Oh, well," it basically made it sound like life was over, and it's just not that, man. It is the coolest thing. Even on the hard days, you know, and we're creeping into teen years, and it's, you know, there's some hard days parenting wise, but man, they're so freaking cool. And they're just so fun to see grow and develop their personalities and how God wired them up and that kind of thing. So I know that's like very specific to the kidless person in this conversation right now. But I think just general, like, hey, one parting thought is like, just you have to fall in love with the processes.
Yeah.
Whether again it's physical, mental, spiritual. You know, one thing I'm really coming back to a place of in my own life spiritually is just falling in love with just being in the presence of God. Because, you know, Trevor, you mentioned like as a pastor, this is probably more natural for you. Honestly, it's probably not, because everything feels like, so I have to produce something like for everybody else. And so just coming back to that place of like, I just want to enjoy being in the presence of God.
That's it. I would leave the listeners with the reminder that a personal invite holds power. Because I mean, Mike, we had a relationship before, but you personally invited me to say, hey, come try this thing called CrossFit with me, and to change my life. It changed the trajectory of what I was going to pursue, my career, how I ultimately met my friends and my wife. So if you truly do love somebody and you know that something is going to benefit somebody, just a simple invite can truly change their life, whether it's to a gym or to a church or whatever that looks like. So Mike, I appreciate your friendship when we were close and our friendship from a distance. I appreciate your influence and everything you've done for me over the years. So thanks for cutting out this time, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more, check us out on social media or visit holohealth.com to learn how you can start living a truly healthy life today. That is HOLOHLTH.com. Thanks.